Hello and welcome to the second part of a Christmas story. If you're new to this is, as I just said, the second part, so I'm gonna leave the first part of this Christmas story in the description down below, as well as the links to my website where all of the chapters are written out, and also the playlist for the last two Christmas stories. Also, it's 3 PM and it's already dark, and it's snowing, and it's so pretty. But yeah, okay, let's get into the story. December 4th. Could I talk to you for a sec? I saw Leah grab the new girl's arm and the two of them disappeared through the classroom door, leaving a confused Josh, a surprised Till, and a worried me. Would they fight? Was this Sam girl Josh's new girlfriend? Had she been the reason for the breakup? Had Josh wanted to make Leah jealous? Was she? None of those questions were answered when the girls re-entered the classroom about a minute later, Sam smiling and going back to Josh's desk, and Leah with a frown on her face and barely any words for her own desk neighbor. Before I could continue to analyze the situation, though, Chris's voice brought me back into reality. "So I'm gonna spend Christmas at your place again, if it's okay?" Quickly, to disguise my previous lack of attention, I nodded in approval and forced my focus onto our holiday plans. This year would be Chris's third time celebrating with my family. 4 years ago, my best friend had showed up crying at my doorstep and had slept on the floor of my room for a week before going back to a home that was suddenly fatherless. He had died of lung cancer, and even though it had been a long time coming, Chris's mom still escaped every single holiday by spontaneously booking a holiday to some tropical island and leaving her 3 kids to look after themselves, which led my own mom to jump into action to assure with all her parental powers that my best friend wouldn't feel alone. I knew that Chris was thankful for everything my family has done, but I also knew that a Christmas in a borrowed home with borrowed parents wasn't the ideal situation. And so we both spent every year's holiday planning secretly, hoping our plans would be unnecessary in the end. But that wish had yet to be fulfilled. December 5th. As soon as I got home, I pulled a soft blanket over myself and walked around the house like a cuddly ghost for the rest of the day, only shoving my limbs out of this newly achieved comfort to gather a cup of coffee and some lunch, before sitting down on the sofa to ponder the meaning of life, the necessity of coldness, and, of course, a certain girl whom I'd seen walking through the snow on my way home. For a moment I had actually considered talking to her. She had been alone, so there was no one to embarrass myself in front of, and I could have easily started a conversation by complaining about the cold. Maybe I could have even asked her to get a warm drink without it seeming too forced. We could have gone to the nearest coffee shop. I would have paid for a drink, finally making up for that first slice of pizza, even though I wouldn't have mentioned that. That would have sounded way too obsessive. And she would have smiled at me in that shy, kind way of hers that makes my fingertips prickle. Maybe she would have told me about why Josh and her had broken up, or we would have talked about something basic like school and Christmas presents. Either way, we would have felt comfortable in each other's presence, and somehow would have started to cover really deep and personal grounds. She would have told me a secret, nothing bad, nothing tragic, just something she doesn't normally share, and I would have smiled, knowing that she trusted me. We would have been so lost in our conversation that suddenly it would have been dark outside, and she wouldn't say it, but I knew she was afraid of the dark, so I would walk her home, and then on her doorstep maybe. But no, none of that had happened, because I had turned around and left her to walk home alone, just like myself. December 6th. Ha! Won again! You're gonna have to buy me some celebratory champagne or something if you don't stop losing soon. Chris's laughter rang in my ears as I couldn't decide whether to grin or roll my eyes. Of course it was true. I was exceptionally horrible at Mario Kart today, and it honestly annoyed me. Because between the two of us, I normally was the one to do a little winner's dance on the sofa as Chris did now. Fed up with losing, I threw my controller onto the cushions next to me, which interrupted Chris's triumphant face abruptly, and only a second later I heard a thud to my left. Hey, what's wrong? The fingers wrapping around my wrist felt like handcuffs snapping shut. I didn't want to tell Chris about this. As much as I loved my best friend, when it came to Alea, I had already received enough eye rolls to get the message. Chris thought my crush was stupid, and I was sick and tired of justifying myself. So no, I didn't want to talk about it. But now I had made it obvious that there was something on my mind, and would have to explain my mood. Great. Come on. I'd love to say I'm just suddenly become a master in Mario Kart, but you're obviously somewhere else with your thoughts. I shrugged, loosening the heavy grip around my arm in the process, and tried to play it off. But there was no fooling Chris. We had known each other for way too long to be able to keep any secrets for long. So I gave in and shot my best friend a telling glance, and as expected, I was met with immediate understanding and a heavy sigh. Alea. The hand left my arm completely and instead sank into the cushions along with the rest of the body connected to it. Of course, it's Alea. I began to turn away, ready to move on to a more agreeable topic, or to simply leave the room, when the words unexpectedly continued. Listen, I know you've been in the same class as her for a decade now, and I get why you like her, really do. It's just, of course, this was a lead-up to another let it go speech, and I almost got my hopes up that I might actually hear some encouraging words on the topic. How well do you truly know her? This time it was my body slumping into the cushions. But Chris wasn't done yet. I mean, you've never even talked to her. I just think that maybe you're more into the idea of her than into the actual girl. I didn't even bother to come up with an answer. We have had this exact conversation before. So instead I grabbed the controller again and pressed play, this time determined to be the first one to cross the finish line. December 7th. After the talk yesterday, we didn't talk much more, and Chris had left my house pretty early, leaving me with a grumbling feeling of guilt in my stomach. So as soon as I woke up this morning, I sent a quick text asking whether we wanted to bake some cookies, since it was the 1st of Advent. It took no more than a few seconds for a big thumbs up to appear on my screen, and I started getting ready with a relieved smile spread over my lips. We hadn't even started the actual baking yet, but already the floor looked like the snow that had been steadily falling all weekend long had somehow found its way into the kitchen. Additionally, the counter was covered in printouts of recipes which Chris had decorated with the words "yum" or "delicious" in big colorful letters, even though most of them were completely new to us. I was completely focused on pouring the exact right amount of lemon juice into our mixture when I heard a small, insecure voice next to me. So, are we okay? As I looked at my best friend, I was met with honest concern, and the guilt in my stomach bubbled up again at the thought that I was responsible for that expression. So instead of responding, I wrapped my arms around the sad little creature and nodded strongly. Good. December 8th. Josh was standing at Alea's desk when I entered the classroom on Monday morning. He was standing at her desk, and they were talking. What were they talking about? Someone was pushing against my shoulder trying to get through, and I realized I had stopped walking and was now blocking the door frame. Quickly, desperate to keep the incident as unobtrusive as possible, I hurried along to the safety of my seat in the back of the room. Chris wasn't there yet, so I took my time unpacking, watching Josh and Alea as she tried to avoid his eye contact. He was talking urgently. It seemed to be about something important. Were they getting back together? No, she looked too angry for that. They didn't appear even nearly happy enough in their conversation to be making up. But then, what was it? Once I was lost in my failing attempts to lip read, someone sat down next to me. "You really are obsessed, you know." I knew I was supposed to react to that in any way, be annoyed or amused, maybe defend myself. But that was the exact moment that Elia's desk neighbor Till ended the interaction between the two ex-lovers by taking his seat. Did Elia look relieved? Did Josh say anything else as he turned to leave? I couldn't tell. Either way, Chris wasn't completely wrong. December 9th. Look, it's Princess! My little sister ran around the Christmas tree that stood in the middle of the town square, surrounded by wooden booths and festive lights. She stared in awe at the ornaments hanging in between the artificial candles that gave the tree a warm glow in the beginning dusk. It had been a tradition for this particular Christmas market to add one new ornament to the already overflowing tree each year, and from that developed the tradition for Lily and me to find that little figure in the mass of familiar ones at the beginning of each holiday season. "See, up there, next to the purple elephant from 2 years ago." I walked over to her side of the tree and let her show me the newly discovered treasure, amused by the story she started to make up about the delicate doll in yellow velvet. Because that was part of our little tradition as well. All the ornaments had to be connected in one gigantic fairy tale. I held up my phone in front of my sister to record her enthusiastic chatter, so that later today I'd be able to sort of the actual plot, which I'd then add to our handmade storybook. As soon as she was done with her little tale, a proud grin on her face, we thought about where to go next. I knew Lily would want something to eat, probably something very sweet, and sure enough, she exclaimed, "Let's get candy corn!" only a second after I thought it. I picked her up and spun her around in circles whilst trying to figure out which direction the smell of caramelized sugar came from, and as I spied the colorful signs of the food corner along one of the small paths, set my little sister back down, immediately taking her hand to keep her from dizzily tumbling over as I guided her towards our sweet destination. Once she held a bag of her chosen treat in hands, and a happy smile plastered over her face, I took some time to look around the Christmas market properly. Most of the booths were familiar to me. Some of the faces inside the wooden huts had changed, but the themes were always the same. I made out the corner where the drinks were sold, steam lying under the wooden roofs in thick clouds that spread the scent of chocolate, punch, and a hint of alcohol. That was where we were supposed to meet Chris in half an hour, so we still had enough time to take a little stroll around the market. Lily already stood in front of a booth filled with beanies that looked like animals, so I went to join her, and afterwards we simply walked from one place to another, my little sister mostly attracted by bright colors, whether they were candles or jewelry. It was as I trotted after her towards a store with shimmering earrings that the small group a few meters away caught my eye. My first instinct was to hide, which of course was completely idiotic, not only because Elia and her friends surely didn't care about my presence at all, but also because the busy amount of people passing by already did quite a good job of shielding me from view. So instead of following this instinct, I guided Lily towards the next well-smelling booth, from which I could still keep an eye on my crush whilst buying my sister and me each a crab to keep her occupied. I watched Elia talk to her friends, her hair falling in curls around her face, which was brightened by a smile that made her eyes glow among the dim shine of fairy lights surrounding her. She laughed at something that Jill had said, and even though the sound didn't find its way over to me through the chatter of Christmas shoppers, I still imagined the light ring in her voice. "Aren't you eating yours?" Lily snatched the almost already cold crab out of my hands and brought me back to the present. "What are you looking at?" She craned her neck, trying to find the center of my attention, but barely able to see anything apart from people's stomachs and loads of shopping bags, even as she stood up on the tip of her toes. "What's over there?" I tried my best to keep my gaze from wandering back to the group, but saw them making their way into our general direction. "I want to see too!" I sighed, torn between staying hidden from Elia's eyes, as I was now directly in her line of view, and keeping Lily from doing further gymnastic actions that might just end up breaking her neck. Eventually I gave in and snatched up my little sister to lift her onto my shoulders. Yay! Now I can see everything! Oh, it's so pretty from up here! I couldn't help but grin at the giggling girl, whose clumsy fingers were tightly wrapped around my forehead. And then it happened. Elea caught my eye. Our looks actually met, and she recognized me. That smile of hers broadened, and she gave me a little wave, which I almost responded to, before thankfully remembering that I should keep both hands where they were for my sister's safety. Instead, I only smiled back, though her little trio had already walked past me, and Elea's eyes lost mine a second later. But still, she had seen me. She had actually seen me. December 10th. The next morning I showed up at Chris's house extra early to make up for yesterday. Though when the door opened to a very grumpy face, I suddenly wasn't so sure anymore if my gesture would be appreciated. If your consequence of being 15 minutes late is waking me up half an hour early, I will have to take my forgiveness back from yesterday. Chris grumbled as I entered the living room, and even though I was pretty certain that there was supposed to be a mocking undertone that simply became a victim of a lack of sleep, I still felt a new wave of bad feelings wash over me. Oh no, don't give me those puppy eyes. You know I'm joking. Really, you can keep the forgiveness. It were just 15 minutes and I had one punch whilst waiting and you had Lily and everything. Now the bad feelings turned into a knot in my throat, because Chris talked too much, forgave too much, joked too much to actually mean it. And I knew it was my fault that we were in this situation, and my fault that my best friend felt the urge to let a light-hearted expression facade what we were both painfully aware of. Oh, stop moping, will you? It happens and now it's over, and I'm too tired to deal with sad you right now. The knot tightened even further, but I forced a small smile on my lips, and apparently that's all it took to clear the air. For now. Come on, I bet you haven't had breakfast yet either. Cappuccino? Alright, that's it for the Christmas story this Advent. I hope you enjoyed it. And as I said, all the links to the written ones and the ones from last year will be down below. And yes, I hope you have a wonderful Advent and a wonderful winter time. Maybe some snow like I do. It's so pretty. And I shall see you soon. Bye!